Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 23-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living in Montreal. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record most of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. So at the time I'm recording this video, I haven't actually competed at the high performance competition yet. That's taking place in a couple days, and that is basically like an event where the Canadian athletes can earn more points to be selected for the World Cups. And as soon as that's wrapped up, basically I'll start to enter my peak season, and we're going to start doing the competitions that I have the most focus on. And those competitions are the North American Cups. So this year there are going to be 3 of them for bouldering. They usually have 3 a year. There's going to be 2 in the US and then 1 in Canada. The first one is in Salt Lake City at the US Team Training Center, and then the second one is at Vail in Colorado, which is also like part of the GoPro Mountain Games, which is what the World Cup used to be part of. And then the last one is going to be in Ottawa. They just announced this one like earlier today actually, and it's going to be taking place at altitude in Canada. So those are going to be the 3 biggest competitions of the year, and I wasn't super psyched on competing last year, so I actually didn't do all the North American Cups, and I skipped a lot of other events. Like I didn't do the high performance competition last year, and I just wasn't super psyched on competing, and I needed like a mental rest. But that's very different this year. I actually have found like a lot of new motivation, and some of that is from YouTube, and some of that is also just from taking a break. It's just sort of come back naturally. And so anyway, the point is I'm very, very psyched on the North American Cups this season, and I'm going to put like a whole lot of effort and focus into trying to perform well at these events. So I thought, just to sort of kick off the training in preparation for these 3 big events, we can reminisce on what I think I would say is my best performance in a bouldering competition to date. And this was at the North American Cup that I won a couple years ago in 2022 in May, and it was the Alexandria North American Cup. And I thought it would be fun to do sort of a throwback video and check out probably what was one of my best performances. And I say it was my best performance because I was super consistent in this comp, which even in events that I have like my end result was quite good, I wasn't necessarily consistent throughout the whole competition. So this was like a rare instance where I was like at the top of the rankings through every round, which is something that is very hard for me to do. So let's check out what was probably my best performance to date in a bouldering competition. So here we are for the qualifications. I guess I'll just mention right off the bat, these videos were not filmed with the intention of being in a YouTube video, so we're kind of just stuck with the portrait mode for this episode, but I think they do the trick, and we can see what the climbing was all about. So here we are for the qualifying round. So this was your standard North American Cup qualifying format, which consists of 8 boulders, and you get 8 attempts maximum and 2 hours to go around and try them all. So all the competitors are climbing with each other. We can watch each other, talk about beta. There's no ISO, and we can just go around and try the boulders however we want in the 2 hours with 8 attempts max on each boulder. And I find that I'm usually probably a bit better with the ISO format, and I struggle a bit more with this style of comp format because it usually consists of like some long lines that you have to wait in, like you have to wait your turn to try each boulder. Obviously it's not quite free for all. You like turn your card into a judge and then you wait for your turn to be called. So I find that I usually will like squeak my way into semifinals in this round, just because the long lines and the rests really get to me. I find that I can't really stay warm enough to perform at my best, and I usually just try and scramble my way through the round and hope for like a better performance in semis. But I do remember that this round in particular was one of my better performances in this style of format, and after this round it gave me a bit more confidence on how to navigate this kind of format better. I found that this was the first sort of event where I would, once the line started getting too long on a boulder, I would go and I would just move on to a boulder with a short line so that I could keep my body warm and try and cater to my weaknesses in this format, which is getting cold really easily. And so I remember just this sort of being the event where I kind of pioneered this technique of mine, you could say. So let's check out this boulder here, men's number 6. So this boulder was the highlight of this qualifying round. If you'll notice, only 3 people got the top of this boulder: myself, Sean Ravatu, and Ethan Hoffman. Ethan is actually a former Canadian champion as well, which is a fun fact. But yeah, the crux of this boulder was matching this finish hold here, which was this tiny little spike. And like I said, you get a maximum of 8 attempts per boulder. And that was my 8th attempt. I think Sean also topped on his 8th attempt. So without matching the finish hold there, I wouldn't have been able to send the boulder. This event was kind of a while ago at this point. It was like 2 years ago. So I remember I fell matching the finish quite a lot. I don't remember how many times, but probably at least 4 times I fell matching the finish hold there. And then I guess I'll also mention, so this video is kind of like pre-edited. I made this video for myself a while ago, so I don't actually have any of the videos of like my failed attempts. I guess that's something important to mention. So we're just going to sort of see my best attempt on every boulder throughout the competition, because when I would make these videos just for like my own records, that's what Zach from the past would do. I just liked to save my best attempt and delete all of the old ones. So it's kind of unfortunate we don't get to see the progression on all these boulders. Wish I had kept those videos. But anyway, despite not being super good at this format, I managed to have quite a good qualifying round and was going into semis in 2nd place, which would be taking place the next day. So here we are the next day for the semifinal. So as we can see by the scoreboard on the right, this round was very good for me. I would probably say that this round of bouldering was just so obviously I'd like to call this whole event my best performance overall in like a bouldering competition to date. And I'd say this round specifically was the best round that I've had probably in my whole career to this date. I remember actually we have a bit of a shaky start, but then the latter half of this round, I remember being so in the zone and focused. And this is sort of the round that I use to refer back to when I am trying to find a really good comp headspace and need to remember what it feels like to perform really well. Because as we get into the later half of this round, I just remember feeling like I had never been performing better. And I always try to remember this feeling looking back on this competition. So let's start off with boulder number 1. So this is going to be testing my memory quite a lot, but I kind of remember how the whole event played out still decently well. It was a while ago, but it wasn't too long. So I remember starting off on this boulder, the climber that came out right before me, Solomon. I remember him doing the boulder, and then it was my turn. I'm up next, and then meanwhile, I'm still really at this point in my career, I'm really still pushing for the Canadian team, and I really want to be going to World Cups. And so this was at the time a really important event to earn some points and work my way up the Canadian ranking. So I remember this was sort of a round where I needed to make finals, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. So we're starting our round. We turn around for boulder 1. I know that the climber before me topped it. I could kind of tell based on the crowd that it was getting quite a lot of tops, and especially the climber before me topped it, and it wasn't that big of a reaction. So I'm like, okay, probably need to top this one. And we turn around and we see this super sketchy slab. First of all, I'll say that this boulder is super epic, and actually this round in particular, the boulders were super, super well set. And I remember this being one of my favorite rounds of bouldering. So anyway, we turn around and see this super sketchy slab. You got to jump off a dual text to start, and it looks quite insecure. And I remember being super nervous when we started this boulder, and I kind of scramble my way up it as we're about to see. So I think I remember falling at the beginning here once, doing this jump move off the dual text, and then I work my way over to the middle, and I have to I remember having to stand on the crease of this volume, and that was something that I was playing around a lot with in training at the time. And then I think I fell once on the jump move, and then here I am on my third try lining up the finish, and there's like a nice little screw hole that I'm putting my pointer finger in on this volume, and I was able to sort of nervously make my way up the top of boulder 1, which took a lot of pressure off. So now here we are at boulder 2, and I could tell that the climber before me didn't top it, but I didn't have a whole lot of information about this boulder going into it. It was hard to tell the progress people are making based on the crowd, but as we can see looking at the scoreboard, this boulder turned out to be the big highlight of the competition. So when I turn around for this boulder, I think, okay, these holes all look like pretty positive, and this boulder is just going to be sort of an efficiency battle because it's quite long looking. But I didn't realize that nobody had done it at all before me. So I didn't I wasn't going to this boulder thinking, oh man, no one's done it, it's probably going to be possible. I just knew that it wasn't topped by the climber before me, and it looked like my style, and hopefully I could perform pretty well in it. And I actually have a bit of like my own sequence that I find at the end that I think help separate me and get the top of this boulder. And let's just talk about it before we actually see it. So we'll notice on the third last hold, it's like the undercling after the black pocket. I guess the sequence that everyone was trying was to match that undercling and then go up with your right hand to the second last hold. And we'll notice that I actually hand-heel match that hold and then bump to the second last, and it helps set me up better for the finish, and I avoid a very powerful undercling sequence, and that gave me a bit of an edge on this boulder. But yeah, going into this boulder, like I said, I didn't have too many expectations. I was feeling like nice and groovy a little bit after shaking off the pressure of doing like a slab boulder, because this is also sort of back when I wasn't as good of a slab climber. So having a slab top under my belt gave me a bit of confidence that now I could just focus on the power boulders that were a bit more my style. And so I remember thinking immediately when I'm trying this boulder, I said, okay, right off the bat, I gotta climb this thing fast because it's gonna pump me out. I can't waste any time. I gotta just pick a sequence and go for it. And here I am sort of accidentally finding this heel hook method to bump again. And then this last move is super hard. Like the finish hole is obviously upside down, and I was like a fight to stay on the wall, and ended up being like the highlight boulder of my competition. So now here we are for boulder 3. And this was like the point in the round where I had achieved the best mindset mid boulder round that I've ever achieved in any competition. And it's pretty evident why. Like at this point, I knew that especially by the crowd reaction, there's like a special cheer when you're the first person to get a top of a boulder or stick a move. And I could tell that I was the first person to top that red boulder, which at the time I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that was such a big achievement. And then after I had realized it, and Sean Rabbitude qualified first in this event, and then I was sitting on the chair and I could tell that he didn't do it after me, and I knew that I was the only one in the round to do it. I don't think, maybe outside of youth, that's never happened to me before. I've never been the only person to do a boulder in a round outside of a youth comp, I would say. So that was like a really special feeling. And it gave me obviously a huge surge of confidence for the rest of this round. And that's why I just, like, going into boulder 3, I turn around for when my 5 minutes started, and I have never felt just so calm and confident and like just excited to climb the boulder in front of me than I was in that moment. And usually I will just turn around and be nervous right off the bat, and just it's like always like a fight and like a scramble to get my way up a boulder. But I always try to think back and remember just how calm I was and try to recreate it when I find myself being nervous during a comp round. And even though this feeling was sort of generated and created by obviously having like a very successful first 2 boulders, I want to try and like at least fake it or mimic it without having, flash the only boulder, being the only one to top a boulder in a round previously, and just try and create this feeling on boulder 1 and like from fresh. It's a very difficult thing to do, but having experienced it in the last half of this round, I at least now know what the feeling is that I'm supposed to be achieving. And I was just so calm and confident and happy for the rest of this boulder round, which I always try to remember. and is a good reference. So anyway, this boulder 3 is like, again, like such an epic looking boulder. Like the boulders in this whole round, I had a whole lot of fun trying. I thought they were like really World Cup style and really well set. So this boulder consisted of kind of like a low percentage jump move in the middle here that was quite my style. And then this ending sequence was the really hard part of this boulder and where everyone in the round was struggling, including myself. Like I fell trying to match just the volume at the top here on my first try. But then here I find this like sneaky toe hook to help me get some opposition and make my way through the crux of this boulder 3 and get a top. So like I was just talking about this feeling of being so calm and relaxed and just, you know, focusing on the climbing and being happy. This boulder was the same sort of thing, right? Now I had like 3 good boulders under my belt. I felt like I was already set for finals, and this would just be like, you know, some bonus climbing that I was about to do. And it really showed on this boulder because like this is a kind of slab where you want to be very patient and calm and steady in your feet, and any sort of nerves are really going to bite you in the butt on this boulder. And so having not an ounce of nervousness in my body really allowed me to like climb the slab really well, which was also a big step for me back then because like I said, I actually was a really bad slab climber back in 22, and it was actually, I think I only started to get like pretty decent at slab when we moved to Germany and spent a year there. And ever since then it was like, if I topped a slab, it was by accident, not because I knew what I was doing. So the calmness really helped me do well on this boulder that we're about to see here. But yeah, this boulder, I guess, was also quite tricky for the field. When I was doing this boulder, I didn't know how many tops it was getting. And so I was just kind of winging it. And so I like fluffed this sort of low percentage stand-up move at the beginning here. And then as I'm going into this sequence here, I remember I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be like a jump across and like kind of like a jump kick. There's a little crimp jib on the zone at the very top. It's like kind of visible. But then since I was just, you know, so calm and I had like room to play with, I tried to go for a static approach first and really try and balance my way across, which ended up working quite well. And I was very surprised with my performance on the slab, especially back then when I really was not a slab climber. But yeah, that was my best boulder round of my career. Just like my best performance, my best head game. Every time I find myself getting nervous in a boulder round, I always try to place my head back to where it was during this boulder round. And I managed to qualify for finals in first. And I was like feeling like I could feel the momentum building too. Like going into finals later in the day, I remember messaging Maddie and being like, wow, I've never felt so confident going into a round before. And that's why, like this, if you recall, like in previous videos, I like to talk about how much momentum is a real thing. And this was one of the comps that really was eye-opening for me to this idea, and like just how powerful momentum is, and how it is like a really tangible thing that success will just increase your odds of further success by a lot. And that's what I found going into finals. Later on, we'll see that I climb like with a lot of confidence just because of this round. So let's talk about this first boulder. So I'd say I climbed pretty well in finals, but the victory was very much in the balance and wasn't super, definite, as we're about to see. So this top of number 1 that we're about to see was obviously what secured me the win, as we can tell by the scores on the right. And, 3 tries doesn't seem like too many attempts. Like, oh, okay, maybe if you fell, you'd have a bit of wiggle room. But the crux of this boulder is the last move. And I fell twice at the last move and then sent it on my last try. But I remember doing this boulder with 10 seconds left. So it was very much my last try. And we're about to see how sketchy and low percentage this last move is, and how on the line my top was. And so it was by no means, it was a very close win, I'm trying to say. The semifinal round was quite convincing, but this final round, I just managed to edge out the win by this super clutch top of finals boulder 4. And it was quite a fun moment too, because I was the last climber out and the first one to top this boulder. The crowd went pretty nuts, and this is another highlight of all the comps I've done, like up to date. Like topping this boulder was a lot of fun. So let's check it out. So the beginning of this boulder revolved around some kind of funky moves, working through all these volumes. And I remember my first try, it took me like a lot of time to maneuver the sequence. And then I had found something that I was able to sort of speed through on my later tries. But then, yeah, anyway, we work into the stem where I take a second to I got 20 seconds on the clock here, take a breath. It's all or nothing here. I know that this is going to be an important moment if I can stick the move. And then, yeah, jumping to the sloper and landing the foot was super lucky, and a very clutch top on this final boulder. So here we are for boulder 2. So like I mentioned, I wasn't a super great slab climber at this point, and I was also only just starting to get starting to level up my paddles and just coordination moves in general. So this boulder that we're looking at right now, we start in a bicycle with a toe hook and then our other foot on top of this low foot, and then we go 1, 2, 3 to the sloper, the dish, and then the next hold. And so the hold on the big volume, the little hold poking out the right side, has a little screw-on crimp on it. And then same thing with the circle dish hold that's not the second hold, but then the third hold. So they both have little crimps on them, which makes this paddle extra spicy because we're not just paddling between 3 big holds. We hit the first sloper, and then I have to land my right hand on a crimp, and then my left hand has to land on a crimp too. So it's very precise, and that's why you see most people were taking a lot of tries to do this, because it was a very low percentage move. And so I was falling a bunch, and then the clock was winding down, and I knew that if I didn't, because I could tell lots of people were doing this boulder, and if I didn't do this boulder, all of a sudden my top on number 1 wasn't so special, and everyone else would have caught up with me. So I knew that I needed to top this boulder to stay ahead of the field, and it was putting some pressure on me, but I finally got lucky and snagged this paddle move. So here we are lining up this first move. I gotta be super precise, and then I just get lucky and snag these crimps. And then I'm just as soon as I stick this move, I get a surge of confidence, and I'm feeling good, and just gotta keep it together for the end of this boulder. And this one was also really nice. All of the boulders in semis and finals and the qualifiers were really well set boulders, and I really was vibing with the style of the boulders throughout the whole competition. So here we are for boulder 4, and the reason that there is no video of boulder 3 is because if you remember at the beginning of the video, I was saying how I only liked to save my best attempts from all of my climbs, and basically my best attempt on boulder 3, all of my other competitors, was just falling on the first move, and I wasn't really interested in saving that, I guess, back then. But yeah, boulder 3 was a slab, and the first move was this hard bounce across move that nobody ended up doing, and so it didn't really change much of the score. And I was actually really motivated going into boulder 3 to get a top of it, because at this point I had actually been topping every boulder of the competition, which is also why I remember this just being one of my best performances. Going into boulder 3, I just felt whoa, I'm topping everything. This is such a cool feeling. This never happens to me. And so I was really motivated to do the slab. I was kind of close to the move, but like I said, I wasn't the best slab climber back then, so I wasn't able to do it, and the streak was broken, and my hopes and dreams of topping every boulder in the competition were crushed. But it was okay because I still felt like the win was in my grasp. And so speaking of the win, going into this boulder, as we can see, Solomon was able to top it. And so I don't remember how I knew this, but I knew that going into this boulder, based on our scores, I think I was asking about people's tries or something during ISO. I knew going into this boulder, all I needed was the zone to get the win, because I knew nobody had zoned the slab, and I was having less tries than Solomon somehow. I don't remember how I knew it, but I was 100% confident if I just stick this zone, which is 2 holds in front of me, the win is in my hands. And this is North American Cup, so it's that's a big deal. Not only for the points that it would give me for the Canadian rankings, but also just because North American Cups are prestigious in themselves. So I was super motivated, and all I had to do was stick like a move basically. And going into this boulder, like I said, I was very motivated. And as we can, let's look at this boulder. When we were looking at this boulder during preview, we were quite confused. Like, clearly it looks like you swing to the left, step on this hold, and then go like paddle and then get the zone. But this swing step move is like so lateral. Like, we were all looking at this move thinking like, what the heck? This looks like so weird. And then a lot of us were talking about going for a direct approach, which is what you're about to see. So I don't know if it was Solomon. It might have been Solomon goes like straight from the start to the zone actually, but I go straight to the black hold. And so I fall 4 times on this campus move, and I'm getting closer and closer and closer. Clock's winding down. I know it's right in my hands. And so I just get super fired up. And this is like a super cool move that we're about to do, which ends up getting me the win of this competition. So there's like a little crimp jib on this black. So I got to campus up. I got to just hold this crimp. And it looks like this crazy like scorpion move, but it's basically just kind of, you're dead hanging this crimp. And if you latch it, you're going to hold it. So I finally stick it, and then I grabbed the big orange jug, and I knew the win was achieved. And I was like super psyched. But I wanted to top the boulder anyway, for the crowd. So I'm trying hard here. But this crimp rose move was like really, really hard. And that's like a very impressive top by Solomon to finish that boulder. I remember not feeling super close to that move. But yeah, anyway, that wraps up just a fun throwback of what I regard as my best performance in a competition. I just remember being super in the zone. I topped a lot of boulders. I leveled up a lot of comp skills that at the time were really bad for me, like my slab and even a bit of like paddles and coordination. And I always just look back at this comp to remember like the zone I was in. And it gives me confidence knowing that I can perform like this. And I just have to find it within me somehow when I'm feeling nervous. So, like I mentioned, the big goal for the season is the North American Cups. There are 3 of them. Start off with Salt Lake, then Vail, and then the Canadian stop. I'm very, very motivated. I'm going to train hard. I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on my training to peak for these events. Probably the biggest peak I want to hit is going to be at Vail, because that event is just, it's like amazing. It's a spectacular event. Obviously it was the World Cup for lots of years, and now it's in Salt Lake. But I went to the Vail North American Cup last year, obviously, and it didn't go so well for me. But the venue and the crowd and just the stacked field is just so crazy, and it's such an intense event and a very cool event. There were 130 plus guys last year, and so many of them were just, the strongest people in North America. So that's the event that I really, really want to do well in. So yeah, my goal is to win a North American Cup this season. I want to do my best in all of them, but it would be really cool to tick off another win. And that's what I'm going to train really hard this season for. And we have about a month now of training until the first one. Maybe like a month and a half, 2 months. But yeah, hopefully the Montreal training and the Montreal boulders will help level me up, and I can perform well in the North American Cups this year. So we can look forward to some more training, and with those on the horizon, insert catch video outro here.